Imagine coming home after a long day of work, dreaming of nothing but collapsing onto your couch only to find someone else's car parked in your driveway. Not once, not twice, but day after day. That was the life of Reginald Carter, or Reggie, as everyone called him. A middle school science teacher in Lakeland, Florida, Reggie lived a quiet life. His days were filled with the chaos of teenagers who cared more about TikTok than the periodic table, and by the time he made it home, all he wanted was peace. His house was simple, but his sanctuary, a single-story brick home. Trimmed lawn, a driveway just big enough for his car, and maybe one visitor. Nothing fancy, but it was his castle. A place where he could grade papers, sip iced tea, and watch the ball game without interruption. Until Blythe Vanderholt decided otherwise. She was the kind of neighbor you never asked for, the type who treated everyone else's property like her own. It started small, a sleek silver Lexus SUV parked in his driveway one afternoon. Reggie thought nothing of it. Maybe she had a guest, maybe cars needed shuffling. He let it slide. But then it happened again, and again. At first, Blythe offered excuses. Just dropping something off. Delivery truck needed room. She'd wave dismissively, flash a tight smile, and walk back into her house like she was doing him a favor. Reggie wasn't a man who liked conflict. He believed in giving people the benefit of the doubt. But patience has limits, and Blythe was pushing his every button. One evening, after an exhausting day of teaching, Reggie pulled up to see her Lexus parked square in the middle of his driveway. No sign of her, no apology. Just entitlement staring back at him in the form of a shiny luxury SUV. Reggie marched to her door and knocked. She answered with a smirk, wine glass in hand, as if she already knew why he was there. "Reggie, what's wrong?" she asked in that condescending tone that could make anyone's blood boil. "What's wrong is that your car's in my driveway again?" She pretended to be shocked, then laughed, then brushed it off like it was no big deal. "Oh, don't be so uptight. I live right next door. What's the harm?" But to Reggie, the harm was clear. This wasn't just about a parking spot. It was about respect, about boundaries, about a neighbor who thought rules didn't apply to her. Weeks went by, notes were ignored, conversations went nowhere. Even the HOA, where Blythe held influence, dismissed his complaints with empty promises of courtesy emails. She wasn't just dismissive, she was protected, until one Friday evening, Reggie pulled onto his street, after a long week at school, only to find her Lexus proudly sitting in his driveway again, like it owned the place. This time, his patience snapped. He didn't knock, he didn't argue, he didn't leave a note. He dialed one number, the tow truck company. Minutes later, he watched as Blythe's prized SUV was hoisted onto the back of a truck and rolled down the street. For the first time in weeks, Reggie smiled. But he had no idea this was just the beginning. Blythe wasn't the type to back down, and what followed would shake the entire neighborhood. To be continued? The night Blythe's Lexus was towed, Reggie thought he had finally solved the problem. He imagined her storming into the impound lot, paying the fee, and learning her lesson the hard way. In his mind, that would be the end of it, a quiet driveway, a peaceful home. But he underestimated her pride and her need for control. Within an hour of the tow, she was pounding on his door. Hair out of place, pajamas wrinkled, fury written across her face. "Where is my car?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Reggie stayed calm, leaning against the doorframe like a man who had all the time in the world. "Towed?" he said plainly. The look of disbelief on her face was almost comical. She screamed about being on the HOA board, about her connections, about how he was going to regret this. Reggie simply pointed her toward the tow company and shut the door. Most people would have stopped there, realizing they had pushed too far. But Blythe wasn't most people. If anything, the tow lit a fire inside her. She began a campaign of harassment, a passive-aggressive war fought with petty complaints and power plays. First came the notes, handwritten letters dripping with fake concern. "This is a community. We should be more considerate of our neighbors." Reggie tossed them straight in the trash. Then came the HOA notices. Suddenly, the same ferns that had sat on Reggie's porch for 2 years were in violation of community aesthetics. His garbage bins were left out too long. His mailbox paint was fading. It was obvious who was behind it, and the pettiness almost made him laugh. Almost. Because behind every fake violation was a reminder she wasn't backing down. Her next move was bolder. One evening, as Reggie watered his lawn, a white security SUV rolled up, lights flashing. An officer stepped out, adjusting his belt like he was preparing for something serious. "Sir, do you live here?" he asked. Reggie raised an eyebrow, confused. "Yes. Why?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "We got a call about suspicious activity." Reggie didn't even need to look. He already knew. And sure enough, across the street stood Blythe, arms folded, watching with that smug smile. Reggie kept his cool. He dismissed the officer politely, then walked straight over to her porch. "You know damn well why they were here," he said. She feigned innocence, acting like she was just being a good neighbor, watching out for the community. But her eyes gave her away. She wanted him angry. She wanted him rattled. Instead, Reggie smirked. Calm, controlled, unshaken. "Blythe," he said quietly, his voice steady, "I gave you more chances than you deserved, but you keep pushing. So now, let's see what happens when I push back." For the first time, she didn't have a smug reply. For the first time, he saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes. But her doubt didn't last long. Days later, she did it again, parking her Lexus in his driveway, this time blocking his garage completely. It wasn't just disrespect anymore. It was a challenge, and Reggie accepted. He didn't knock. He didn't argue. He called the tow truck again. This time, he didn't hide. He sat on his porch with a folding chair, arms crossed, and waited as the tow truck hooked her car and hauled it away in broad daylight. The entire street saw it happen, and they also saw Blythe come storming out, screaming like she was the victim. "You're going to regret this," she shrieked, as Reggie calmly sipped from his water bottle. "You don't get it, Blythe," he said, standing up as the truck pulled away. "I'm not the one who's going to regret anything." The second tow should have ended the fight, but instead, it lit the fuse for a full-blown war. Blythe wasn't done. She wanted revenge, and this time she wanted the whole neighborhood to watch. To be continued. By the time her Lexus was towed a second time, the neighborhood had seen enough. Everyone knew Blythe had crossed the line, but instead of admitting defeat, she doubled down. Within days, flyers began appearing on mailboxes, laminated and bold, accusing Reggie of being a bad neighbor, who resolved disputes with aggression instead of communication. The wording was slick, careful, but anyone with common sense could see who was behind it. Reggie pulled the flyer off his own mailbox and laughed. It was laughable, really, all this chaos over a driveway, but what made him laugh harder was the reaction from others. His phone buzzed with texts from neighbors. Some he barely knew. "Ignore her. We all know she's the problem. She'll find me $200 for wind chimes. Last year, she's a nightmare." And one message that made him chuckle. "If she parks in your driveway again, I'll split the tow fee with you." Still, Blythe had one weapon left: her position on the HOA board. At the next community meeting, Reggie decided to attend, sitting right across from her. He expected fireworks, but what came next was better than he could have imagined. The board chair cleared his throat and announced there had been multiple complaints of harassment and abuse of HOA power. Then he said the words Reggie had been waiting to hear. "The complaint is against Blythe Van." The room shifted. Whispers filled the air. Blythe's head snapped toward the board, eyes wide with shock. "Excuse me," she demanded, but the chair continued reading. "Misuse of security calls, unauthorized HOA communications, retaliatory actions against residents." It was all there, documented, undeniable. For once, Blythe had no smirk, no dismissive laugh. She looked small, cornered, exposed. Reggie leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, watching the queen lose her crown, and that's exactly what happened. After weeks of investigation, the HOA had no choice but to act. Blythe Vanderholt was removed from the board, stripped of the influence she had lorded over the community for years. Just like that, her power was gone. But even after that humiliation, she tried one last stunt. Reggie came home one afternoon to find his trash cans missing. Not tipped over, not misplaced, gone. He scanned the street and there they were, stacked neatly behind her house. Reggie laughed, pulled out his phone, and snapped photos. He didn't knock this time. He filed an official complaint. It was the final straw, with evidence piling against her: harassment, false complaints, security abuse. And now theft. The board had no choice but to put an end to it once and for all. Blythe was formally censured, her reputation destroyed. In a community that once feared her, she was now avoided, whispered about, pitied. The woman who thought she could control everyone had lost everything. Months later, a for sale sign appeared in her yard. Some said she was embarrassed. Others believed she had made too many enemies to stay. Whatever the reason, Reggie didn't care. He stood on his porch the day the moving trucks pulled away, took a deep breath, and finally enjoyed the peace he had fought so hard to protect. For the first time in months, his driveway was his again. No Lexus, no notes, no HOA threats. Just quiet, just freedom. And the story of Blythe's downfall became legend in the neighborhood. People who had once stayed silent now shared their own stories of her bullying and fair fines. False reports, petty harassment. She had ruled like a tyrant, but in the end, she was undone by the very community she tried to control. Reggie didn't see himself as a hero. He was just a man who had enough. But the lesson was clear for everyone. Bullies thrive until someone stands up to them. And when that happens, the fall is not only inevitable, it's spectacular. And so, the teacher who spent his days wrangling restless middle schoolers ended up teaching his entire neighborhood a lesson they would never forget.